Well, at the end of season 7, the keenest students will remember, House basically goes off the deep end and he loses it entirely and crashes his car through the front of his Cuddy's living room, dining room. They're in the living room, he hits the dining room. So nobody dies, but they only don't die by the skin of their teeth. And as a result of that, House flees in the first instance. And as a result of that, we rejoin season 8 with House having served time, not surprisingly, for whatever the charge would be, reckless endangerment or criminal damage, and he served a fair number of months. So this is where I am now, is the institution where House has been making his dwelling for the last six months or so. And it's a lesson, children, stay out of jail. It's actually quite like an English public school, but it is very, very real. These are tiny, tiny cells, and they were built, I think, for 2 people, and apparently they had 4, sometimes more, by the time it closed. So if you have a problem with small spaces, this is not for you. I would advise against that career in shoplifting, if you were considering it. House is not above, well, he's not above much, actually. He's certainly not above feelings of rage and bitterness and jealousy and all those, the less attractive end of the human spectrum is very much alive in him. He's not, although I see a sort of nobility in this character, I would never pretend for a minute that he behaves nobly all the time. He certainly doesn't. And this was a case of him lashing out of hurt. He is in genuine pain. It's maybe the only time in his life when he's opened himself to another human being, found a kind of happiness and a kind of contentment, and it is taken away from him. And he just doesn't have, for all his mighty intellect, he just doesn't have the emotional resources to deal with it. So he throws a very big tantrum, very big house-wrecking tantrum. Well, House has been here 6 months, and where we are now is really sort of a medium security prison. This is not as hardcore as it gets, but at the same time, this is not an open prison by any means. There is a definite physical regimen and restraint, but he's not in with the hardest of the hard. And I think in that situation, House has been able to survive by his wits, and I think a certain amount of respect has been given to him. He's essentially been able to sell his medical expertise. Everybody has to have something that they can sell in order to survive, I suppose. And he's been able to sell his medical expertise to get by. I think in some ways House is a survivor. I think I could imagine him doing okay. When physically tested, I could imagine him doing okay. This is a rough old place, and House does get knocked around a bit. Yes, this would. Well, this would test anybody, but yes, House. But in typical House fashion, some of that damage is of his own making. He's a man who cannot apparently stay out of trouble for very long. He has a self-destructive streak in him, but also rather a noble streak that will cause him to risk his own safety and his own well-being for the sake, if not of other people, at least of getting the answer, getting at the truth. House feels guilt. He doesn't necessarily react to guilt in the way that most of us do, but he does feel it. He is aware of it. He's capable of torturing himself in some very ingenious ways, and I do think he regrets many, many things about his life. And I think regretting losing Cuddy in such a hideously violent and destructive way, I think is always going to haunt him. Dr. Adams is a very charming young doctor who works in the prison clinic, now played by Odette Annabelle. I say now played by her, as if we've had other people playing it before. We haven't. Played now and for all time by Odette Annabelle. And she becomes a sort of a confederate of House's. He manages to enjoin her to his cause of solving this problem, but she at the same time, of course, is in a position of power over him. She is not an inmate. She is a visiting physician, and so she is able to also deputize him to work for her. So they have a sort of strange alliance between the two of them to get this problem solved, and they have a similar hunger for the answer, for the puzzle. She is here, I think, because she feels it is her way of giving. Being a good doctor doesn't necessarily mean working on the Upper West Side or working in Beverly Hills. One has to reach out to the poor and disadvantaged and heal and help wherever one can. But at the same time, here she's dealing with some drug addiction problems and lancing a few boils. There isn't anything that really gets her intellectual curiosity going until House engages it. And so the two of them set off on this hunt together. And I believe and hope that they make an interesting and likable couple. I think they like each other, although they don't necessarily know it yet, but I think they do. What House identifies in her eyes, because as you know, House can look into someone's soul, as I am doing now. No, I'm not, because it's the lunch hour. I don't look into souls in the lunch hour. But yes, he sees in Dr. Adams, he sees a kind of unease and a discontent, a restlessness that this is not really satisfying her. She has a hunger for more, to test herself further, and House identifies that and exploits it, frankly. Odette is absolutely delightful, absolutely delightful. She's been, she's only been here a couple of days, has already completed her work on the first show. I did give her a nickname. I gave her a nickname because she came back for the second week. I thought, I'm not going to bother with nicknames if she's calling her agent over the weekend saying, I can't work with this guy, get me out of here. But as she came back for the second week, I thought, well, she's probably worth investing in a nickname. I don't know if I should tell you what it is, though. That seems, I'm making public something that, let me think about that. I'll come back to you on that. I mean, it's not that it's not suitable for broadcast. It is. I would say, though, that Odette said that she would come up with a nickname for me, but she doesn't know that that's not allowed. She is to call me Mr. Laurie and only Mr. Laurie now and for all time. That's just the way it works. I don't make the rules. No, wait a minute. I do make the rules. What I mean is, well, she'll learn. I'll have someone explain it. Yeah. It is a desperately sad thing for me and for everyone on the House, obviously, not to have Lisa here. She's she's a stunning actress and incredibly good company as well. So it is a great, we will miss her very, very much indeed. But at the same time, we wish her well, and it's unsurprisingly, she was snapped up within minutes by the Green Bay Packers, I think, took her. And we wish her well, and that's great because she is so astonishingly good. I have long maintained that Lisa Edelstein does the work of 3 or 4 actresses, that she is able to combine so many. She can be the you know, the funny one and the dramatic one and the powerful one and the sexy one, and she can do all these things. She has all these cards in her hand, and we will miss her, but we wish her well. But as you would expect, now that she's not in the show, we're not just going to shoot empty spaces where she would have been standing or have pauses where she would have been speaking. We are going to try and tell stories as best we can. And who knows, maybe maybe we will find solutions to things, or we will find different ways of telling stories that might not have occurred to us otherwise if we'd just gone on with the same a group of people. So I don't know, but it's what's done is done, and we wish her well. I am releasing a record. I'm laying it at the feet of the American public for them to thumbs up or thumbs down. I don't know. I have no idea how it will go. It's a record of it's New Orleans music essentially. It's a sort of New Orleans blues has always been my first love, and this is a declaration of that love. And which is really, the title of the album is Let Them Talk, which is the title of a James Booker song, which we do on the album. But also it expresses a sort of, it's a wonderful song about an unrepentant, defiant love for a person, but in my case, for this music. And to hell with what anyone thinks. This is what I love, and this is who I am, I suppose. This music is this is how I feel, and it was a thrilling experience, terrifying, I won't deny. And we actually toured with it. We released it in Europe, and we had a mini tour. We did about 8 shows, which doesn't sound like very much, but if you've done no shows, to go from no shows to 8 shows is a lot, you know. And that was thrilling, really, really thrilling. It is something I've always wanted to do, but never considered doing, because I suppose it just wasn't the right time, or I didn't have the confidence. And to tell you the truth, I still don't have the confidence. But a man came to me from a reputable record company. I believe they're reputable. I asked around, and he said, "Do you want to do a record?" And my first instinct was to say, "No, I'm not qualified. I don't have the chops for it. I'm not." And then I thought, well, this may not come my way again, and we only pass through this world once, and I don't want to be looking back saying, you know, I could have done a record. I want to say, I did a record, and whether you like it or not, I did it, and it exists. And so I took the leap, and I'm so delighted that I did. I'm not saying the audience will be delighted. Listeners may not feel so delighted. That remains to be seen. But I had an amazing experience with amazing musicians. I'm overusing the word amazing, but when I say Tom Jones and Dr. John and Irma Thomas and Alan Toussaint, I think you'll agree the word amazing is justified. I was incredibly lucky to be in their company, and I hope some of their sort of magic dust has rubbed off. It's something I'm incredibly proud of, and can't wait to do it again, to be honest, if they'll let me.